Absolutely. Well, so to start with, to define spear phishing, it's a targeted attack. So what you're looking for when you are spearing someone through phishing is you are trying to get information about that person that would get them to react or take action on whatever it is you're phishing. So to actually use a baseline of what we're talking about when we're talking about phishing. So phishing is where you are sending out maybe emails or text messages or some other form of electronic communication to individuals to try to get them to take some type of action, such as clicking on a link or open an attachment, those types of things. And in a broad sense, just plain phishing, when we do plain phishing, we're not really concerned with the recipient in terms of knowing that much about them. We're just sending them the fish and hoping they'll click, and we may want to steal their credentials, or we may want to install ransomware or malware on their machine. But when we're talking about spear phishing, it's much more specialized, because again, we're gathering information about those individuals to increase the likelihood that they're going to bite our bait. And a good analogy really is fishing, the traditional form of fishing, where you actually throw bait into the water. When you go out and you do general fishing, you put bait on, you may have in mind what types of fish you want, but you just kind of cast your rod out into the water and you wait to see what bites. Whereas with spear fishing, that's really a lot like, so you target a specific type of fish. So maybe it's a swordfish. And so you know where those swordfish are, you know about those swordfish, you know generally how big they are. And so you're going to then take a spear that's specially designed to catch that type of fish, and you're going to spear them. So, there are a lot of different ways that attackers will spearfish. So, what they may do is they may do what we call CEO fraud, and basically what that is it's where they go in and they impersonate, like they learn about the company. Maybe they learn who the chief financial officer is, or the chief executive officer, or even the chief information officer. And then what they do is they send a spoofed email to employees. So they found these employees' email addresses, or they've got access to these employees' social media accounts, or their phone numbers, their mobile phone numbers, so that they can send texts. And then what they'll do is they'll say something like, hey, this is the CEO, or they'll make it look like they're the CEO, and I need you to donate money to this cause, or I need you to go purchase some gift cards, or I need you to transfer some money to another bank account. So that in recent years, that term again is called CEO fraud, but it's really a much more broad-based, basically making yourself appear to be from a trusted executive within the company. And that's become a huge problem. There are many companies that have lost a lot of money through that type of spear phishing. Then you also have things like malicious attachments. So what the attacker will do is they will say, hey, I'm from I'm an attorney, local attorney, and maybe I'm sending something to the finance department, or to a municipality's property records department, and I need you to open this attachment. I need you to review this document, or whatever. Or maybe they'll send it out and say they're from HR and that it's payroll data or something like that. I mean, who's not going to want to open that attachment? And then what happens is when they open the attachment, it installs ransomware, or other types of malicious malware on the machine, and then that allows them to to escalate or to do whatever it was they were trying to do, which is usually cause harm in most cases. You've got situations like clone phishing. A lot of people have seen this before, where they go into a business, they steal the database of customers, so they know you've shopped there. They know that you have an account there, and what they'll do is they will clone the website, or they'll clone, marketing email messages, or clone shipping notifications and those types of things, and then they'll get you to click on them. And again, maybe they're going to install malicious malware on your machine, or maybe they're going to try to steal your credentials to that account. You see a lot of clone phishing among the big companies like Amazon and DHL delivery services, those types of things. Another big example that's happened a lot in recent years, and I've seen this many times in my own practice, is emails coming from HR saying, hey, we've got a new policy, or we need you to update this information. And what they've done is they've basically cloned an email from the HR department. So it's got the logo on it, it's got everything on it, and then the user clicks on it and they enter their login credentials. And then from there, the attacker, who was the spear phisher, can then perhaps authenticate to the company's network and do all kinds of damage, steal information, so on and so forth. There are a lot of examples out there where lots of companies have been scammed out of millions and millions of dollars. There are companies that where someone was speared and it appeared to be from the finance department, so they transferred money, or other types of examples like that. So in short, there are a multitude of ways, and they come up with new ways every day. But companies like municipalities, government agencies, healthcare institutions have been huge targets of spear phishing in recent years, going in and stealing private health information, which they can then use to blackmail companies and all kinds of things like that. And one other example I think I want to add to this, a lot of people may have remembered this back, of course, everyone knows about Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is a popular medium for attackers to use because it's much harder to trace. And a lot of you may remember back in, I think it was 2019, 2020 timeframe, someone basically spear phished some administrators, people who had administrative access at Twitter. And basically what they said is, and then they went in, they stole the credentials of the admin users. They got in and they were able to take over high-ranking people, like Obama was one of them, where basically they created tweets that said it was from Obama saying, hey, I want you to donate Bitcoin to this account. And they were able to steal millions and millions of dollars in just several minutes. So lots of examples. It is absolutely effective, and again, I've seen it in my own practice on multiple occasions, and I've seen organizations be severely impacted by it. The reason it's effective is when you say it's a lot like fish. The analogy I gave before about throwing a line out with some general bait on it versus knowing exactly what you're going after. With spear phishing, usually what happens, the process or the attack process is that the attacker will gain information on individuals. So, they'll find out, information such as, where they work, maybe who their coworkers are. They'll find out, just as much information as they can. And then what they're able to do is they're able to craft their fish, which again normally is going to be an email in most cases, but we see a lot more in text messaging nowadays, and again social media, instant messaging, those types of things. But it's effective because they can personalize it. So when the person gets it, it looks like it's from a legitimate person. The message seems a little more reasonable because, again, the spear phisher or the attacker, he knows he's gathered information about this person. So the more information he has, obviously, the more personalized he can make it. So, you may have a situation where, someone works in the finance department and they've gained information on that person, and they know that that person in the finance department works with certain companies. And they also know that that company purchases products from certain companies. So then they can craft that email and they can, again, make it much more believable. And that really is, at the end of the day, why spear phishing is so much more effective. They've got the information, they're able to make it believable, and they're able to craft the message in such a way that the user has a strong incentive to take action on it. When you get an email from your chief executive officer or your chief financial officer saying, hey, I need you to take care of this issue right away, a lot of people are going to fall for it without looking more into the fact that it is a fake. And later in this interview, we'll talk about some of the ways that you can identify whether or not a phishing attempt is a spear or if it's legitimate. But suffice it to say, what happens is these spear phishers or these attackers have enough information that they're able to craft those messages to get their targets to take action. Okay, so again, the first stage of that is gathering the information, which I alluded to before. So again, we're going to learn as much about the targets as we can. In some cases, we may just learn in general, like, okay, we know that all companies of this size are going to have, in this industry, are going to do these types of activities, and it may stop there. And that may be enough for them to craft their message to get the intended target to take action. But in other cases, they'll be much more specific. So they may know that they need to get more information on them. So they may send some general emails that just gather basic information, and then as they gather more information, then they craft the messages or personalize it even more. Or they may use techniques where basically they go in and they steal someone's account in a company who normally, like say a real estate company. Well, a real estate company is going to work with a lot of property management companies. They're going to work with a lot of title companies, and they're going to work with a lot of banks. So what they may do is they may go in and they may say, okay, we're going to find out enough about the real estate company to then craft a message to send to all the banks they do business with or all the title companies they do business with, to then get them to transfer funds or those types of things. And some of the other ways that some of the ways that they'll do these again is they'll do like fake login emails. So they'll send an email, say it's from the real estate company, and they'll say to the title company or to the attorney, and they'll say, hey, our website has changed. We need you to log in and sign a new acknowledgement of our terms and policies, or we need you to update your account or whatever. And then what they'll do is they'll clone the company's website. And what happens is then when the target gets the email, they'll see the email. The email looks like it's from the real estate company. There'll be a link. They'll click on the link, and when they open the link will look like exactly like the real estate company's website, and it'll have a login prompt. And then what they'll do is they'll enter their login name and password. Well, once they enter their login name and password, now the attacker has that person's account information, and they can log into that that real estate company, and they can do whatever they want to do with along the lines of whatever that account allows. So maybe you spoof someone and say, hey, this is Amazon, we need you to verify. Of course we know that you have an Amazon account because we've speared enough to know that. And so then we say, we need you to log into your Amazon web account so that you can do this. So then the target will say, well, the email says it's from Amazon, and when I clicked on it, the website that came up looked like Amazon. So they enter their credentials in, and then now the attacker has access to that Amazon account, and they can go in and order and have products shipped to themselves or whatever the case may be. So in short, the methods that they use will change from time to time, but at the end of the day, it's about getting information from the intended target using things like cloned web pages and fake URLs or redirected URLs to get the user to go to a place so that they can gather information. Now, of course, we also have ransomware, right? So, we have to remember that in some cases they may not be trying to steal credentials. Sometimes they just want you to click so that they can install ransomware, lock your machine up, and then charge you, a ransom to get, access to your data back. So those are some of the main methods they use. Well, I want to start this off because it's become so important in recent years that I think it bears, really talking about first, and that is multi-factor authentication. Individuals as well as organizations absolutely and positively must use multi-factor authentication. And for anyone who's not sure what that term means, it's simply using multiple authentication methods for signing into accounts. So you may have a password, and you may also then, after you enter the password successfully, then the second factor will be you'll get a text message with a code. Everyone's seen those before, and you'll enter the code in, and so now you've got two factors. So even if the attacker was able to steal the person's name and password through some of the methods that I've spoken previous to this question, they would still have to have that second or third method of authentication, whether it be a code or some type of authentication app on the phone that you have to press approve on. So multi-factor authentication is our last line of defense, and I guess it could also be called first line. It's both first and last line of defense because that will eliminate most credential compromises, which the credential compromises are the biggest problem that we have with spear phishing. But also, just in general, when we're talking about whether it be, stealing credentials or installing malicious software, spying software, or ransomware, or any other type of malicious type of activity, individuals as well as companies, again, need to deploy mail security tools. And this is particularly important for organizations. So, some of the mail security tools that you have, on an industrial strength basis, you have a lot of companies out there that offer basically gateways or devices that sit in front of your mail server. And so all incoming mail hits these protection devices. And those protection devices use all kinds of different methodologies for weeding out and identifying fake emails. So you may have a situation where an attacker is trying to spoof accounts. Well, a good mail security appliance or software server will be able to identify, hey, this person says they're from Amazon.com, but they're not really from Amazon.com. And then also you have, as part of these security tools, they can identify through aggregated intelligence services like Talos and CrowdStrike and some of the other big security intelligence providers. They know of these known malicious sites, and so automatically these mail security devices will quarantine those messages, and they'll never reach the end user. And also one of the things, and as IT professionals, we all hear this over and over and over again, but it bears repeating because people, because they get busy or they don't have good processes in place, they forget. Always make sure that all your devices are fully patched and configured correctly and integrated into the ecosystem, your IT infrastructure properly. People take shortcuts. And that is the domain of malicious actors like spearfishers. They look for those vulnerabilities. They can find out whether or not you're using some type of mail security appliance, and if you're not, they know that most likely their email is going to get through. And then the last one, which to me is right there next to multi-factor authentication, is employee education. I've worked with multiple companies helping them to implement security awareness programs, educating employees on how to identify fake emails or fake texts or imposters on social media and those types of things. Making them understand, hey, this is how you can validate a URL. It's amazing to me as a chief information security officer who does interface with a lot of different people, and also as a systems integrator and consultant for many, many years. It's truly amazing to me how many people won't hover over the link in an email to make sure. It may say it's going to Amazon.com, but then you move your mouse over it and you can see that it's not going to Amazon.com. And also looking at email IDs, and things like that. When the email comes in, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll say, say that, there's someone, Johnny at abc.company, and Johnny spells their name Johnnny. And so then what they may do is they may change the spelling of it just a little bit. So, like, for example, you see it all the time with Amazon. Instead of it saying Amazon.com, maybe they'll change the O to a 0 or something like that. So there is an Amazon.com with a 0 instead of an O. It's a website, and it looks like Amazon's website, but it's not. So, looking at those, the person that it's from, and making sure that it is, at this point appears to be who it's from, and then, scanning the subject line, making sure that the subject line doesn't say urgent or something like that, because usually that's a key giveaway that this is probably some type of spear. The organizations that are really smart do is they conduct what are known as phishing simulations, and that's basically where you have a platform where you send you as your own company send your employees phishing emails, and you find out who clicks on them, and then what you're able to do is you're able to cater your education program to the needs of the organization based on your experience. And then as you learn what types of emails your users are clicking on, then you can get even better at crafting emails to teach the users where they're making their mistakes. So, again, to summarize that, certainly mail security tools and all that, deploying logging tools and auditing tools are very, very important. But at the end of the day, implementing multi-factor authentication and educating your employees are the best way to prevent spear phishing. Certainly. So I've alluded to a few of them here, and I'll try to make sure I cover as many as possible. We come up with new terms all the time, but the most popular phishing medium is email. That's still the predominant type of phishing. And so basically what we're talking about is crafting some type of email that is going to go to recipients. And it's going to try to get them to take some kind of action in order for us to deliver our payload or steal their credentials, that type of thing. But we also have phishing techniques like vishing, for example. So that's vishing with a V, and that stands for voice phishing. So maybe what an example of that would be, I call the help desk, right? And I say, hey, I'm a user, and I need to get access to my account. I forgot my password. I need you to reset my password. Or, I'm from a bank, and you have a past due amount. We need you to update your credit card information or something like that. So voice phishing has also really, really grown in recent years. And most people have received some type of voice phishing. One of the most popular ones is the Microsoft support scam, where basically they call the user and they say, hey, listen, your Microsoft account has been breached. Your computer has a virus on it. We need you to allow us to connect to your computer. And then they go in and they install ransomware or something like that. So that's vishing, using the phone. And then we have smishing, which that's going to be text messaging and SMS, short message service. And basically that's similar to email phishing. We're crafting some kind of message, and we're going to send it via text or SMS, and we're going to try to get that user to click on a link or call a phone number, or take some other kind of action, which is going to get us one step closer to, stealing their credentials or stealing, getting money, getting their credit cards, or installing ransomware on their machines, or whatever the case may be. And of course, we've talked about spear phishing. That's a type of email phishing, but it's just much more targeted. And I would be, remiss to not point out whaling, which is spear phishing on steroids. So basically, we're going after high-profile individuals in the organization. So in the case of spear phishing, we may go after lots of people in the organization. We may just say, hey, we're the HR department, and you need to update your information. So we know these people work at this company, so we're spearing them in that way. But with whaling, what we're doing is we're identifying who are the key players. Who is the chief financial officer, or who is the chief information officer, or whatever. And then we're getting even more specialized, and that's what we call it whaling, because we're going after the big fish, right? And then in recent years we've come out with another term, angler fishing. Right, and basically, there's lots of different ways you can describe it, but the long and the short of angler fishing is using social media platforms and accounts to trick users. Whether it be to get them to click on a link on Facebook, or to through some type of Facebook messaging or Instagram messaging. To again, do whatever it is we're trying to do, whether it be to install malicious software, or steal money, or steal account information, or whatever the case may be. So those are the major types of phishing. Oh, it is, absolutely. Well, I want to start off by saying, if you look at, there are a lot of specialized services that provide research on losses in the industry. And, for example, Verizon every year puts out what they call the breach report. And IBM has another report called the cost of breach report. And those are generally free to the public. And then you've got a lot of paid services that you can get from companies like Gartner and Forrester and things of that sort. But the bottom line is that all of these talk about the financial cost to companies. And they estimate that between 80 and 90%, depending on what research company you read, between 80 and 90% of all breaches or damage or credential stealing or any of that stuff usually starts with some type of phishing, and human error, humans falling for that. So when you look at it at the whole grand scheme of things, if you have a situation where 80 to 90% of your problems are coming from a specific type of activity, that's going to get your attention. So, phishing, since it is so predominant, it's become a huge concern. Now, I remember when this really first started back in the early 2010s, and then the mid 2010s. There were a lot of companies that didn't even know what phishing meant. But even if they did, they didn't have protection mechanisms and things like that. But once the statistics started coming out on the financial cost, like for example, IBM in 2022 in their data breach report said that it cost you a company about $4.5 million per incident for a breach. Well, that's a lot of money. And the odds are very high if you don't have protection mechanisms in place, that you're going to be a victim. And so, certainly depending on the size of the company and the type of attack, the amounts could be higher or lower. But when you're talking about an average of $4.5 million, that's going to hurt most companies. But the other thing about it, and probably the bigger damage, and because we're talking about that, we're just talking about remediating the problem. So it may cost you $4 million to remediate a phishing attack. However, you also have to look at all the lost downtime of your employees, depending on what's happened. You have to look at, the cost that you had to spend to remediate the problems, to determine what the problem was, and then remediate it. You may lose intellectual property. If you're Intel Corporation and one of your employees falls for a phish, and that person gets in and steals, designs on your newest processor, that could be devastating. I mean, it could, and it has happened. Reputational loss. And imagine if you're a hospital and you allow one of your employees, because you don't have the right mechanisms in place, one of your employees gets phished, and lots of protected health information on patients gets stolen, which has happened a lot. I mean, all you have to do is Google, healthcare and ransomware, or healthcare and protected health information being stolen. I mean, there are examples, it seems like almost every day. What happens is, when this happens, people lose trust in that organization. Imagine if you're a bank and you get phished and it becomes public. Look what happened to Target back. Was one of the first big examples, of reputational loss due to human error. So the damaged reputation is a big one, and then compliance. Compliance has become huge in the cybersecurity industry, and quite frankly, one of the big subjects of a lot of courses that EC Council teaches is on the growing burden of compliance. Compliance from meeting government regulations, like, for example, HIPAA. The Health Protection Act, which basically says that healthcare organizations have a legal responsibility to protect health information. Well, you can be fined for each person's information that's stolen. So that can it can get quite costly. But also in some cases, if you don't comply with federal rules and regulations, and there are a bunch of different ones again, but if you don't comply, you allow people's personal information to be exposed, or those types of things, the government could actually shut you down if your customers don't. And then, of course, you've got your legal fees, and it just becomes a major mess. And so companies, as they've grown more aware of the risks, not only the financial risks, but also the reputational risks and the potential for lost intellectual property and compliance issues, they're really taking it seriously now. And phishing, and security awareness is an industry in and of itself now. And in fact, there are a lot of CEHs, ethical hackers, that specialize in nothing but this particular security domain. So it's huge. Well, I've alluded to this a little bit, and I'll expand on it a little bit. But it basically starts with reconnaissance. So they may go out on social media or message forums on the internet. One of the great places is to look in product forums and things like that, where people say, yeah, I purchased this from Amazon, or whatever the case may be. So now they've got an Amazon account, right? So at that point, and they purchased this particular product because they said what they said. Social media, going out, learning about the victim or the target, learning about maybe who their family members are, what type of car they drive. I mean, you can learn an awful lot of information about a person by going to their Facebook page, their Twitter feed, their LinkedIn profiles, and so on. That's why a lot of people, always encourage people to take a minimalist approach to the amount of information that they share online. It's not just about, your privacy. It's also about people being able to use that information to target you, because if they got your name, your place of employment, your job title, they go on LinkedIn, they can get your email address if they connect with you. They can get information about the types of things you do in your job, who your trusted colleagues and family members and other contacts are. With all that information, they're then able to craft those messages that become much more personalized to you and much more believable. Well, I've got a lot to say about this, but I think I would be negligent to not use something that's it's becoming really popularized. It's an acronym. How we love these acronyms because it makes things easy to remember. And so, you've got the word spear, right? And so if we break that word down, we say, the S is spot the sender, right? So, hey, who is the sender? Is it someone I was expecting this message from? Is it actually legitimate? Is the domain name the real domain name, or did it just kind of look like the domain name? Simple little changes, like again, changing the zero, the letter O to a zero or something like that, or misspelling the word, but making it really, really close. So that's spot the sender. Then peruse, which would be the P, peruse the subject line. So, we want to look at the subject line. Again, we want to, is this reasonable? Would we have expected this? You see a lot of spear phishers will say RE, meaning reference, to some type of subject that they know that you would be interested in. And so you're like, RE, shipping notification. Yeah, I've been waiting for that package. But if you hadn't sent them a message, then you shouldn't have an RE, a reference in it like that. So, abnormalities in the subject line would be your peruse the subject line. And so then the next letter in SPEAR is E, and that would be examine links or attachments. So we always want to hover over our links before we click them. So we get an email or we get a text message and it's got a link in it. We want to hover over that link to make sure that the link is going where it says it's going. So again, I've used the Amazon example a lot because a lot of people have seen this type of thing. But it may say, the link may say, www.amazon.com, right? But then when we hover over the link says it's going to, Amazon with a zero, or maybe even a whole nother site. I see a lot of examples where the link in the email, the text will actually say it's going to a company site, but when you hover over the link, it's going to somewhere totally different. And that's always a big red flag. And then, of course, attachments. We always have to be suspicious of any attachments that we get. But there are some attachments that are more obvious than others. If they're executables, if they have, they're not, if they're not PDFs or documents or images, then most likely they're going to be executables or something like that. So is it something we were expecting? But even with Adobe PDFs or Word documents or JPEG images, we then need to really make sure that that's an attachment we were expecting. And then, we can save that attachment and we can scan it for viruses and we can do things like that once we've covered those other areas. And then the next letter in SPEAR is A, or assess the content. So, what is the overall content of the message? Would it be reasonable that my CEO would be sending me an email message saying, hey, I need you to do this, I need you to send money here, I need you to do that. Is that something that's normal, or is that unusual behavior? If it's unusual behavior or any of those types of things, and we can't look at that content and say for sure that we're comfortable with it, then we're going to go to the last letter in SPEAR, which is R, request confirmation. The easiest thing to do, and one of the things we always encourage all of our users to do and customers, is pick up the phone and call the person. If it's got their signature on that email, and it says that it's John Doe from ABC Company, which we work with all the time, and it's got their phone number, and that's a legitimate phone number. If it's not, then that should be part of the assessed content, because we know that person doesn't have that phone number, so we would know that it's already, we would be suspicious. But regardless, what we should do is just pick up the phone and say, hey, Johnny, did you send me this email asking me to do this? And if you can get the confirmation, then you'll be okay. So that's SPEAR, and that's just sort of a general way of identifying phishes and that type of thing. But we also want to make sure, as IT professionals and as certified ethical hackers working for organizations, that we make sure that we put in the protections in place to protect the users from getting these types of emails. And we can do that through all kinds of things. I mentioned mail security tools like mail appliances that can scan emails to detect spoofing or malicious players who are known malicious actors. So we've got those kind of tools. And then for things like credential compromise, we've got, security information event management systems that we can deploy that link to our authentication systems. So, if we've got an employee who normally logs in from, city A, and then all of a sudden they log in, from Russia, then that's going to be a red flag, and that's going to allow us to catch the problem quickly before it becomes a major disaster. And trust me, we use these mail security tools all the time for these types of situations. And as long as you are staying on top of your tools, you can identify when employees make mistakes. And then, the last thing, of course, is education. Whether you are an individual or an organization, at an individual level, you need to follow this basic SPEAR acronym to make sure that you're scanning your messages, to make sure that the sender's reasonable and the message is reasonable, and that in cases where you need, you confirm. As an organization, you need to make sure that you've got good security awareness training programs in place to teach your employees about not only existing methods but also new and emerging methods.